welcome artist and Bloomberg Philanthropies board member Ez Devlin and the mayor of Kyiv, Vitaly Klitschko.
Russell.
Such a gentleman. Maybe you could... Vitaly's mic will be warmed up. I just wanted to begin by showing you the portrait that Vitaly and I made this morning. Do you want to see it? Yeah? You sure? Okay. Ready? Is it working now? Well, we did think that if there are 700 mayors here, if I just do one at a time for the next 700 years, we'll get the whole set. So I might stand up because then I'm almost as tall as Vitaly, having been humiliated in the earlier. I wanted to share first a little bit of background to how I come to be in this great privileged position of making a portrait of our hero, as anyone who saw the New York Times article. These are the leaders of the free world, heroes of the free world, not just of Ukraine, but for all of us. And I'm here because of Ukraine, actually. In 2022, I noticed something about my country that I hadn't seen before. We became a country that opened our arms, our hospitals, our doors, our schools to Ukrainian refugees. And my mother and father offered their house to 5 Ukrainian people, 3 of whom have just left now, actually, and they became great friends and teachers to our family. And it was a very positive thing for us, I must say. But I remarked that this porosity and openness that we manifested was not in every direction. We were still engaged in the discourse of stop the boats, invasions on the beaches, and I wanted to understand if there was this dissonance between porosity and closeness in the community in my country. I thought it must be at work in me. So I invited United Nations High Commission for Refugees to gather a group of 50 people who are Londoners, and each day for 50 days there would be a knock at my door and a stranger would enter. Just like, to me, if you can believe it, because he is such a distinctive rock star, Vitaly was a stranger to me at the beginning of this project. I didn't know this morning that I was going to be drawing this great man. I knew I was going to be drawing a stranger, and I had to meet myself through my engagement with Vitaly's face. We did not speak while we did the portrait. We only spoke afterwards. And I made 50 of these portraits, and I encountered, people were from 28 different conflict zones. And so that led to me being here. But I wanted to really ask Vitaly some questions, if I may. When I sat down and we'd finished the portrait and I asked you about your background, you said, I'm also a painter. And you told me quite an interesting story about your material of paint. Can we talk about that to begin with?
First of all, good afternoon, everyone. Great to be here. Great to talk to everyone. And as you call me, as hero, I'm not. Heroes are Ukrainian people who actually more than 4 years defending our homeland, and everyone in Europe, everyone in the world have to understand the reason of this senseless war. We Ukrainians want to be the part of European family. We want to be the part of democratic world. Putin told, I'm not allowed. You always was part of Russian Empire, and the reason of this war. We fighting for our democratic future. We don't want back to USSR, and we defending right now, and everyone have to understand, we're defending right now not just our homeland, our future, and our children, we're defending also every one of you. And that's why we are, as Kyiv, as capital of Ukraine, we have great relationship with our friends. Together we are times stronger. I want to say 1,000 times thank you for our sister city. Right now is here the mayors who help to Ukraine, to our cities, to our hometown Kyiv. Thank you. Send humanitarian help, buses, electric generators, help everything to survive, and you help is critical, important for us 1,000 times. Thank you. Thank you very much, because you help is life important to us, and without you help, we can survive. Thank you. Thank you for everyone. Thank you. Last night, surprisingly, I received proposals to be model, or not model, it's to be someone from my face, from my ugly face, to make a portrait from S. Devlin. Wow, I think. He's world famous painter, world famous person. I said, let's try. But I was really surprised that you have not to say no one word. You have just to come, sit, and please don't talk. Okay. It's true.
Yeah.
We spent, I guess, 1 hour looking. I'm ugly. I don't like my face, but there I'm looking much better. Thank you. Thank you very much for great portrait. But anyway, the art can change the world. Art brings the emotion to everyone, and it's very important during this difficult time. Also, bring the good emotion to the people in our homeland and in hometown. And biggest challenge right now to survive, and biggest challenge as mayor is great job. Central government, they declare, we are mayors delivering these services to the people, make life of people much easier and much more comfortable. It's very thankful job. But I never expect in war period we have so much challenges really to survive, to help the people, because the safety is question number one in Ukraine, and we do it everything to help to everyone. And also, you have to know, the front line was never in our hometown. 4,000 building was destroyed, 2,000 apartments building, 300, more than 300 citizens, women, children in our hometowns was killed from drones, ballistic and cruise missiles. It's big drama, and we do it everything to survive and to show our skills, and we motivated very well, because our hometown is our future, and what we're fighting for. And thank you for everyone who support Ukraine. You support, you help critical important for Ukraine.
One of the reasons I ask the co-author when I make these projects to be silent is I want to have an entirely non-verbal face-to-face encounter. I want to be entirely present, not to my preconceptions, what your name draws in association, but just to you, to your eyes, to your features, to the human presence. And it strikes me that as mayor of Kyiv right now, you must have to be present fully to so many. You mentioned to me earlier how you have to be present to the mothers of some of those who have given their lives. And I wonder if you could talk about that as you did so movingly in our interview.
I told already it's a very thankful job to be the mayor of Kyiv. I'm very appreciative and thankful for our citizens. I'm already 3 times re-elected because the first time the people hope, the second time they know you are good, and the third time they sure you're good. And that's why it's we do it a lot to change the city, to change the quality of life of the people. It's a thankful job, but in my job, especially in war period, actually we do it everything to save people, to inform the people. It's and to give objective, true information immediately, and to preserve some bad situation, and a lot of challenges. I never expect so many challenges. We have thankful the job, but in my job I had it 2 things. It's very difficult psychologically. Psychologically, it's very difficult to visiting hospitals, to see young kids, a little bit older than 20 years old, with heavy injuries, no legs, no arms. Sometimes no eyes, because sand from explosion have huge speed, and if you don't have glass protection, you lose your eyes. It's difficult to talk to them, and anyway, you have to support to everyone, and we do that. Sometimes I need weeks, days for recovering because it's difficult. And other things, I had it much more. It's my function as mayor of Kyiv to meet with the parents and give the medals to the parents who lose his child, a soldier. Until right now, I don't know what I have to tell to them. Thank you. We're proud. You can't find the words. The parents cry. They lose the main values, children. Months ago, I cry also. It's very difficult. Some woman come to me and told, Mr. Mayor, maybe you don't remember me. Here you go. You already give the medal to my younger son. A second medal for my oldest. Sorry, I never come to you again. You know why? Because I don't have children anymore. It's big tragedy. It's big tragedy, and we have to do it everything what we can to stop this senseless war. Ukraine is a peaceful country. We never ever was aggressive to anyone, but right now we doesn't have another choice to defend our homeland, defend our future of our children, in our vision to be the part of democratic world. We're fighting for that and pay the biggest price, lives of our heroes. It's difficult part of my job. We're talking with Es today morning about that, and Es told me, please explain the story to the public, and everyone have to listen to this very touchful story. But anyway, it's clear rules of life. You have to fight. You have to fight for your vision, for your values, for your future, and we're fighting. We're fighting, I'm more than sure. Together with our friends, we stop this senseless war what began Russian against Ukraine, to make the crazy idea to rebuild some empire. We see our future as part of the democratic world, and thank you for everyone who support our vision, who support Ukraine. Thank you.
A question that came up when I was at a gathering of mayors at the London School of Economics. Mike Bloomberg, as you know, very carefully follows feedback, and he had invited every mayor to enlist their prime concerns and difficulties that they were facing. And we found, I read the concerns and priorities of 700 mayors, and one thing they all elided over was, how can I get my people to trust me? I am struggling with trust and belief in these current fragmented times with so many narratives. And you, in the condition that you're in the situation that you're in, leading your people need to trust you, and yet you probably don't have all the answers. Can you talk to our group about trust?
It's trust is the most important part in the world. If you trust your partner, if you trust, if partners trust you, as citizens trust you, it's main values. It's very important. It's very important to be together with the citizens. It's very important to fix the problems. It's very important to help to everyone, and trust. You can trust build for a long period of time, step by step, and it's difficult to become the trust, and you can lose in one moment, and that's why you have to be always with your community. It's always be together with them and to help them. It's very important. Public service. A lot of mayors here. It's public service to support the people, to help the people, to make life of people much easy, much more comfortable. And it's very important steps how you build your trust. And I'm very thankful for citizens in our hometown for trust they give to me, to support them, to defend them, and it's biggest value what I have as mayor. I guess it's everyone. It's biggest trust, biggest values for every one of us. Trust what we have from our partners, from our citizens, for our friends. Please save that. It's main value in the life. Thank you. I have one question to you. We have a lot of seminaries, and after 1 hour long, I sit in the morning, no words, and the first words as I told, you know what? I have so much seminary with you. Half of my life I spent in art. is joke. I painting with different colors the face of my opponents. I make it. You make a portrait, I make portraits also in total different, sorry, it's sport. And I was good. I was good in this way.
You only used red.
The art connected people around the world. The beauty connected people to bring the emotion to so many people. I have some proposals. As sportsman, I spent 27 years in sport. I visiting almost every country in the world. I visiting so many cities, and I coming back to Kyiv because my hometown. I live in the United States, in Germany, and many countries. And Kyiv is unique city. It's very beautiful, unique city, very green, clean, big river, a lot of islands. Some part of Hamburg, some part of Miami. It's city is really unique city, and I have privilege with my hands to make city much more pretty. And I have a proposal, Ed. To you, make exhibition of your art in our hometown. And I will be happy to present my hometown and present you art for citizens in Kyiv, capital of Ukraine. For Ukrainians, this will be good message to everyone in Ukraine. We together, we stay in normal life, we fighting, and art play very important role. Emotions play main role in our life. Positive emotions, what we give to everyone, and you can do that. And that's why I will be very happy if you accepted my proposals to coming in any time to Kyiv, better springtime, summer. It's in winter it's freezing cold. When I can make personal excursion for you as former guide of Kyiv. Please accept that.
It's a deal. You heard it here first. It's happening.
And I also, believe me, I hope this war soon will be stopped. If you want unforgettable emotions from one of the biggest and one of the oldest city in East Europe, 1,500 years old. It's city so beautiful. I promise to everyone, unforgettable emotions. Welcome to Kyiv. Welcome for the one of the beautiful city in the world, and that's why I will be very happy. You will be surprised for gas-friendly people, for beautiful city, and you take with you unforgettable memory, unforgettable emotions. Please, welcome to Kyiv. Welcome to our hometown.
I will accept with great privilege and honor your invitation. And we discussed maybe an idea that we might make a group portrait, a national portrait of every citizen, everyone who is in Ukraine. We're developing an algorithm, which you'll hear more about soon, which I've been testing out on Vasily today. So there may be a way to include every citizen, and perhaps even the ones who aren't in Ukraine. So perhaps that's the way that everyone can come together in a portrait. I have one last question. The clock has stopped some time ago, so I hope I didn't go over time. I just thought it was broken. Did we do 10 minutes, or did it just break after a couple? I don't know, but anyway, I'm going to ask one last question that's very important. Mr. Mayor, this great group of people who you can see, all of us are as one in support of you and Ukraine, what would you ask of us? What can we do to support you?
Short message from my previous career. Somebody who's know, I was pretty long time world champion together with my brother in heavyweight. As child, I have a dream to be world champion as Muhammad Ali. Professional boxing was forbidden in Soviet Union, and we listen about the name about Muhammad Ali, but never saw the fights. And actually, in one day, I promised to be the champion. I did that, and thank you for the support. He changed my life, and I have a chance to sit here on the stage and give to you some easy example. Every finger in the hand and is strong. Everything is strong, but if finger come together, it will be time stronger. Together with time stronger, please stay with Ukraine. Stay with Ukraine, support Ukraine. It's critical, important for us. It's not just for us, for whole democratic world, for the future. We have to stop this senseless war. Together, we can do that. Thank you.
Thank you. I have to begin this panel with a sincere apology to my fellow panelists as well as all of you. I have not sketched either of you. I am so sorry. I also can't promise any art exhibitions, but I can promise some lessons that leaders and policymakers can take from this about how to deliver prosperity for their citizens. So hopefully that'll be enough. I want to start with the Deputy Prime Minister. We're so grateful to have you here with us today. For those of you that don't know, Spain is, over the last 3 years, has been the fastest growing economy among large European countries, one of the fastest in the world. The Economist named it the #1 economy in the whole world in 2024. In 2025, you dropped to number 4, but we'll forgive you. Created 40% of new jobs across the EU with just 10% of the population. It's astounding. Your unemployment rate lowest in decades. So where I wanted to start here when we're talking about capable government is just tell us a little bit more about the Spanish economic success story and the lessons that we have so many leaders here from cities and countries across the world. Like, what are the lessons that can be taken from this example of what you all have done over the last few years?
Right, thanks for the intro, and you already made a very good pitch about Spain and in our case. I'm glad to be here with my friend Mariana to be able to talk about Spain and the bigger lessons on new economic thinking at this point. But when thinking about Spain, it's not that much about giving lessons to anyone, but just showcasing our story. And I think over the past 8 years, there have been a few drivers of the Spanish economic growth model that are very clear positive stories. So one is our bet for renewable energies. and the fact that we've overcome at this stage, I think, the usual trade-off that was put on the table around the fact that fighting climate change was coming against competitiveness of our firms. That's not the case. We are increasing the share of renewables in our energy mix, and that comes together with lower costs for our firms, for our households. It comes together with higher investment in our country, therefore more jobs, highly qualified jobs. It comes together with energy sovereignty, and we're seeing this in the current shock. Spain is more resilient to an increase in fossil fuel prices thanks to our bet for renewables. We don't have oil, we don't have gas in our country, but we do have a lot of sun, as I hope you're enjoying, and a lot of wind, so we have to make the best out of our assets. And
a little less sun today.
That's true. And then we have many more assets, and we have the bet around industrialization of our country that comes together with energy to bring regional cohesion. So the geographical impact of having industries that can actually have this plug-in effect, not just in the big industrial countries, but in other also mid-sized cities around the country, is another key factor. And within this, of course, the drive towards innovation, the positive impact of migration. So there are many positive elements that are part of the overall puzzle, the overall positive feedback loop that has been in place of the past few years, and that is showing these big numbers that hopefully are sustainable over time, because that's one of the key lessons. We need to increase the potential of our economy going forward, and that comes together with really, as I said, overcoming the usual trade-offs. Policies like increasing the minimum wage by more than 60% in barely a few years. There were many voices against it, saying that it would completely destroy the labor market. So we did it, and that is being combined with the best numbers in terms of job creation, basically over the past 20 years. So again, there are many myths that we're debunking somehow, and the overall puzzle gives you the whole story, which is a positive one.
Great. There's so much to follow up on there, but
I forgot about inequality. There's so many things. Of course, the key driver, so you need to grow. It's a necessary condition, but it has to come with a fair distribution of that growth. And Spain has also seen a strong reduction in inequality. We're the third fastest reduction in inequality in the European Union. So again, all the bits and pieces are fitting together. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, this is great. A lot to follow up on there, but I want to go to Professor Mazzucato to talk about this at the city level. A lot of your work is looking at the capabilities of different cities, of the way that they're investing in their future and their prosperity. Could you just talk us through some examples of success stories at the city level and about the capabilities that enabled them to achieve that success?
Sure. So maybe just, as an economist, a lot of my work has also been kind of highlighting the defunct economic theory that is currently underpinning some of the problematic policies that got us the wrong kind of housing, the wrong kind of transport, too much inequality, finance for finance sake. So I just want to say that I'm really honored to be on stage with Minister Cuerpo, because we've also just launched a global council on the new economics for the 21st century that should actually underpin whether it's a city, whether it's a region, whether it's a nation, but especially the global solidarity. We just had the mayor of Kyiv here. We need solidarity also with Palestine, listening to citizens, their actual experience and the lived experience, bringing them to the design of the policy, so working with them, not at them. So this is really difficult to do if the underlying economics says, at worst, state, get out of the way, but that's not really where we are today. At best, come in and fix a problem, come in and fix a market failure. And so this idea that there's market failures then makes us structure finance, for example, in problematic ways, that it ends up being a financial gap, as though there's like a well, a hole that you just go throw money into, instead of asking the really important questions: what's the structure of finance? What's the quality of finance? What's the quality of a public-private relationship that's truly outcomes-oriented? And what does that mean for how we actually design the tools of government, whether it's procurement, whether it's public banks, and so on. And so cities are super important. We know that. So many people live in cities, but also because we can learn from them. We should actually be having much more lessons, and I'll get to that in a second, from the local to the national, and have the money then flow from the national to the local. But that assumes that we're even interested in learning, right? So we know that when you go to take an MBA, there's all these interesting courses like strategic management, organizational behavior, decision sciences. That's because we value the private sector correctly. We should value the private sector. Because we've undervalued the public sector, we haven't actually even bothered doing like case studies, what works, what doesn't. And so this public sector capability index that we're devising with Bloomberg, their government innovation team, Jim, I just saw you, Jim Anderson, raise your hand, where are you? There you are, is precisely on that. How can we get a whole network of global cities, first of all, learning from them? What did they experience when there was a flood, when they had to run the Olympics, when they had to run a carnival in Rio? What were the bottlenecks? What are the lessons of, for example, in Rio, using real-time data to actually govern their decision-making between government ministries? This is key, right? When we do like wartime or COVID, we have the situation room where you have the Department of Health, Department of Education, Department of Finance together, but in normal times we go back to silos. So Rio, but also Barcelona, have been really thinking about how to tackle a problem in an interministerial way. If you want to deliver school meals that are not just lunch, not just ketchup. Reagan once said that ketchup was a vegetable because we wanted to lower the cost of school lunch, and I remember I had a t-shirt with Reagan and then ketchup, and it said, which is the vegetable. But we can talk a bit about politics, I assume. That's a natural evolution of just thinking of procurement in a cost-plus way. If instead you're thinking of outcomes-oriented procurement, which is what you need to do if you're going to the moon, where they had to solve all the problems, what would the astronauts wear, how would they go to the bathroom, what would they eat? We ended up with government leading the way, working with the private sector. It's always with the private sector, but with good contracts that were outcomes-oriented, crowding in all sorts of innovative solutions towards mission accomplished. But that already means that we need to think about missions, not just the moon ones, but literally delivering healthy, tasty, sustainable school lunch to every single child. What does that mean for government doing something differently? Department of Agriculture, Department of Health, Department of Education, Department of Finance working together using outcomes-oriented budgeting. As you might know, Porto Alegre in Brazil has really innovated around that. But we learned about that in Rio. We learned about that in Sweden. I've learned about that in Camden, my council, which is the size of Barbados, right? So is it a country? Is it a city? Is it a council? It's a learning experiment. And in Camden, we brought people who were experiencing bad policies to better design those policies. So adult social care, around 10 housing estates in Camden. We brought the carers and the carees to the table to design mission-oriented procurement. So I think we need to work more with and not at citizens. Thank you.
That's great. I want to ask you both about attention in this conversation, which is attention I always find that maybe isn't attention at all, you can tell me, between designing policy for the long-term health of a society, a country, a city, and what existing citizens or residents often demand or often want. So, Deputy Prime Minister, you mentioned immigration. Immigration has been, I think, a very essential part to this economic success story. I've read a lot about it's important for example, demographic health of a country in the long term. But right now, we're seeing a backlash to immigration across Europe, in the United States, and really everywhere. And so there is this tension between what the policies we need for the long-term health of a country or a city and what a lot of existing citizens or residents are demanding politically. And then at the city level, I think there's another example that maybe, Mariana, you could speak to, which is on housing, right? Housing is one of these issues where it is essential for the long-term health of a country or a city to build enough. And yet it is often the very wealthy residents of existing cities who are the biggest obstacles to new construction. And so I'm just interested in how both of you think about this tension between often what is optimal policy for at the city or state or country level and the kind of political constraints that often emanate from the residents of those places.
You can start.
I can? Sure, and there's an additional element, which is the political cycle, which has its own timing, of course, and I think it's part of the conversation, or should be part of the conversation as well. Somehow, I think the proper point of entry into this discussion should be numbers and evidence before getting into feelings or sentiments. And the numbers and evidence from our perspective, from the Spanish case, as I said before, are positive numbers. Positive numbers in terms of social integration, of social cohesion of the immigrant population in our country, contributing to our growth figures even contributing to our growth per capita figures, which is, I think, an important precision to make, contributing positively to productivity, contributing positively to public finances. We have the experience of previous regularization of 500,000 migrants in 2005, 2006. The positive net contribution on a yearly basis to public finances was above 4,000 euros per person. So again, I think once you land those figures, then you can, of course, start talking about how to actually best promote the social cohesion of this population, given that, as you said yourself, we already know what challenges we will be facing as a society in a few years' time, with, for example, aging in our society. So what sort of country are we going to be? What sort of country do we want to be? Do we want to be a growing, inclusive, open country, prosper country? Or do we want to be a shrinking, closed, and somehow divisive or divided country? And I think Spain has taken a decision on that front, and hopefully we can bring everyone on board. But again, I think communication is key around the positive impact of migration, and we have many studies saying that false narratives around that impact create negative sentiments toward integration policies. And that's actually what we need to avoid, and that's where we need to work. And discussions like the one today, I think, are a great place to start.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, on housing, it's interesting. In the UK, in the 1970s, I think it was something like 70% of architects and designers worked for the city. So they kind of worked for the public service. Now it's less than 1%. So it's a crazy statistic, and it's actually from a group called Public Practice that's trying to bring back designers and architects and other really talented people like yourselves into city government. But why would someone want to enter city government if at best you're facilitating, enabling, again, fixing, de-risking the cool risk takers in the private sector? So I think we really need a completely different narrative, right? How do we shape, how do we create an economy? What do we then require from the public service, including that kind of empathy, as I was mentioning before, working with and not at. And in this public sector capability index that we're developing at UCL, Institute for Innovation and Public Purpose, with Bloomberg, we're looking at all those capabilities, like instead of just going down a silo and someone's reputation's on the line with some sort of housing project, how do we make sure that they are in fact flexible, adapting, agile, knowing when to stop when something's not working, but also not build homes as though it's just like cement and steel, but actually building community, right? And we actually wrote a paper with the Rapporteur for Housing for the United Nations. What would it look like to build a human rights approach to housing, where that housing is seen as central for people's own cultural fulfillment, closer to their jobs, with green space, sustainable material, but also that new relationship between public and private actors, where instead of just getting subsidies or being given land to develop, there's a level of a new social contract. And that, I think, is central to all this, because it should never be the state, how big it is, do we privatize, do we nationalize, how do we do business-friendly policies? It's really how do we work together to really build outcomes, services that are good for people. And as I said, that can't be done without bringing those people to that process of design. But the first thing is also to definancialize these things. Housing is literally bought and sold as though it's an asset. In the UK, 80% of our finance goes back to finance, insurance, and real estate. And when you have a real estate and a mortgage market that is not doing what I said, thinking about housing at the center of community with human rights, then of course it's easy to turn it into a financial asset. So this is not about big bad finance, it's definancializing the real economy and really having these moonshots, whether it's around housing, school meals, net zero, and really building those kind of partnerships. But that's really hard to do right now with the kind of training we even have inside our civil service, and that's why we emphasize a lot the kind of new curriculum that we actually need to think differently about market shaping and not market fixing.
Great. Well, thank you both so much for joining me. Give our panelists a welcome round of applause, and thank you so much.
In the span of just 1 week in 2017, 30,000 people were displaced from their homes as Hurricane Harvey hit the Gulf Coast of Texas. Now, at the time, it was the wettest tropical cyclone ever recorded in American history, which means that there was rain and wind and thunder like our country has never seen before. In fact, it got so bad that in many of the cities that were hit by the storm, emergency services completely shut off, which means if you were trying to contact a firefighter, nobody would pick up. And if you tried to call the police, nobody would answer. So what did people do? Well, naturally, in the modern age, they turned to social media. Residents used apps like Facebook and Twitter in order to direct resources to the people who needed it the most and coordinated rescues for people who had nowhere else to go. Now, I start with this story to give you an important lesson. When there are gaps in services that cities are providing, one of the first places that people will end up is social media. And I know this best because I've been on social media for quite a long time. For the past 5 years, I've been known as the Gen Z historian, and I've traveled around the world to cities sharing history and politics and education with many, many young people. Now, these are topics that people often think young people don't care about, but that could not be further from the truth. The issue is that when education is presented to our youth, it's often done in a way that does not put them first and is not engaging with them. The issue is not necessarily in the what, but it's in the how. Now, how do I make my content and my videos that I post on places like TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube engaging for young people? Well, as I said, I put young people first. And this starts very early on in the process. It starts with when I'm deciding what videos to make. Now, as you can see, this is an example of a screenshot from one of the videos that I made a few years ago. And every summer, there's a trend that you'll see on American TikTok apps. And that trend is called the Euro Summer trend. Now, many of you have seen walking through Madrid in the morning, these cafes that are lovely and romantic, these walkable streets where no car is going to run you over if you try. But unfortunately, many American cities, like the one where I was raised, don't have that. They're suburban cities full of roads that look like this. And that's why I captioned this video, "Why do American cities look like this?" Vomit emoji. After deciding what to make a video about based on what young people care about, I then formatted the video in a way that was engaging for them. So the video itself, it's full of graphics, it's full of storytelling. I focus on specific families back in the 50s and 60s who lived in cities and then slowly saw the destruction of their homes to make ways for highways as city leaders and government leaders decided that it was more important to build infrastructure for those who lived outside of the cities instead of the people who lived inside of them. And then lastly, the video caters to what young people want the most, and that's hope. I provided a call to action and a way for them to get involved with petitioning and activism in order to change how cities are designed. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive. And once again, and that's because I listen to young people. I'm a young person myself, and with this content, this educational content, I put them first. The reality is that young people are on their phones every day, almost for the entire day. And if city governments are not going to fill in the gaps that they need, they're going to look to creators to do it, to learn about politics, to learn about what's going on in their city, to find ways of creating engagement and actually seeing the solutions that they want enacted carried out. The data that supports this, 4 out of 5 young people rely on social media as their primary news and information source. And this is news and information about many things, politics included. Now, I'm going to make this easy for you because as a content creator and as a content creator who makes content about politics, I've been able to see exactly what young people want. And young people simply want a civic space online. Now, what is a civic space? Well, a civic space is a place where members of the public engage with each other about the issues and decisions that shape their lives. And there's a very simple formula for all of you who work in city government or work in civics in one way or another to create a civic space online. There are 3 main steps. First, you have to deliver information. then representation, and lastly, discussion. So let's get into those three topics. Information is simply about asking what is happening and answering that question. Here I have three examples, one from New York, one from Mayor Almeida in Madrid, who actually spoke yesterday, along with Mayor Brandon Scott from Baltimore, who also spoke. And these are posts that clearly state some form of information that residents care about. In the middle, we're learning about the different parks that exist in the city of Madrid so people can go out for a nice walk. And similarly, Mayor Brandon Scott is teaching his residents about a spring cleanup that they can attend. Next, we have representation. Now, before explaining what you see on the stage, I'm going to ask you guys a very simple question. How many of you who work in city government or are involved with cities know the local reporters and news stations that exist in your city, and maybe for the purpose of contacting them, have a list of these reporters and news stations that you can access? Please raise your hand. Now, to the people who are raising their hand, keep them up, please. How many of those lists, or how many of you even know the creators or the influencers who are most popular in your city? Your hand went up, I love that. So this is important because representation is all about explaining to the residents who live in your city who lives with them, who are their neighbors. And when it comes to mayors, it's about making yourself approachable. So here we have three examples of a mayor who's meeting a local restaurateur, a mayor who's on a podcast, and another one who's talking to influencers at a local event, influencers that are popular and that once again, young people are watching. They're putting young people first with this decision. And then last, we have the final one, which is discussion. Where can I be heard? I'm going to ask you another question. How many of you guys who are in city government or are mayors yourselves have people, policy advisors, that you look to when crafting policy and legislation? I'm sure people have policy advisors or consultants, a best friend even that they consult. Now, how many of those people are also looking at TikTok or Instagram comments to see what young people care about? Your hand went up, and I love that. So this is important because for us, just like we're getting news from social media, we're also using social media to communicate our opinions on things. And these two examples from Mayor Wu in Boston and some Congress people out in Florida show that they're facilitating discussion on social media, and they're also using social media to communicate where discussions can happen. Now I'm going to leave you with three very specific questions. Feel free to whip out your phones, it's okay. This is about social media. Take a picture of this slide. The first question related to information is, what is one piece of information that you will communicate on your social media? The second one is, who is one young person, creator, or community partner that you will invite in to represent the community? And then last is, what is one discussion question that you want to ask your constituents and discuss in a post? Now answer these questions and act on them, and with that, you'll be putting young people first and creating a civic space for them right in the palm of their hands. Thank you.
Muy buenas tardes con todas y todas. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be in this panel with the three amazing mayors. And I just wanted to set up the tone of this session, which I think speaks very close to the heart of everybody in this room. And, you know, across the world, many cities are currently measuring, analyzing, and trying to communicate data in many different ways. But today we really want to concentrate on air quality data, which I think it's actually very important to understand what are we doing in order to find better ways to communicate air quality data, not only to inform and inspire good policies and programs, but actually to inspire action across our cities. And today we're being hosted by Bloomberg Philanthropies, that I think Bloomberg has always been a champion in the power of data and the power of cities. And basically this session is about putting the power of data and cities together. And we're going to learn about many different initiatives that are happening across Breathe Cities, which is an initiative that I have the pleasure to lead. But first of all, I also wanted to mention a couple of other initiatives that are currently happening in other cities, which I think it's important for all of you to know about. And there's the initiative that it's also funded by Bloomberg, and it's called Bloomberg Cities Ideas Exchanging. And it's actually super interesting because one of the things that they're doing is they're helping cities deploy sensors across many different sites in the cities, but these sites are usually sites with very high traffic, but they also have schools or health centers. So they're really trying to understand how is the data affecting these very vulnerable populations. And I think this is something that most cities are very interested about. So I wanted to highlight this example, which I think it's very good. But there are also a couple of other examples that I would like to highlight. There are leading cities that are creating very creative platforms to inform citizens about how to take action and just understand better when it comes to air quality data. And I maybe want to highlight the example of Denver Love My Air program, which is a very good example of a creative platform that can inspire action of many people in this room. And now I want to talk a little bit more about Breathe Cities, and the mayors that are sharing this scenario with me are mayors that are part of Breathe Cities initiative. It's an initiative that was created in 2023, so it's a quite recent initiative. And we're working with a very concrete cohort of cities across the world in many different regions. And what we're trying to help cities do is we're supporting them to deploy sensors across the cities, but actually we're trying to understand how can we use data to better inform policy, to do programs that have the evidence base that we need in order to have good policy. But we're also trying to bridge how can we use this data so we can communicate better with our people and our citizens. And we're going to hear from our mayors the wonderful stories that they have to share with us. So I'm going to be really fast so we have more time with our mayors. But I do want to tell each of our mayors that it's because of your leadership that we're learning about new ways of doing policy. So it's not just about getting the right information that allows us to have good policy, but it's also translating this data so people can really engage in being part of the solutions. And when it comes to air quality, it's basically about really saving lives, because if we improve the quality of air, we're actually going to save lives and improve the health of our people. So we're going to hear from each of our mayors. I was recently in Nairobi. So Mayor Johnson, I would love you to share more about the great example of the city-led network that you are championing at the moment. And especially, I think it would be very interesting for everybody in this room to learn more about how you have been able to engage your community, your citizens, in working together towards improving the quality of air in Nairobi.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Cecilia. My name is Sakaja Johnson. I'm the governor of Nairobi, but when you come for Bloomberg functions, I'm a mayor. We don't have mayors in Kenya. But I run a city of 7 million people, very young people. Nairobi's median age is 19. More than half of Nairobi is below 19. That's why they have a young governor. Now, I'm lucky that many of my people are tech savvy. We have 100% internet access. Everyone has a phone. And so before we saw the data, and I think I speak for many countries in Africa, we had never prioritized air quality monitoring because we didn't think it's a big issue. We have bigger issues to deal with, unemployment. We have issues to deal with, day-to-day crime and security, until I saw the numbers. That in 2019, I lost close to 2,000 people in Nairobi alone due to respiratory illnesses. And that startled me. Fast forward, then I was a senator. I was not the governor. When I became governor, we got into this initiative. We have been able to deploy more than 87 monitors across the city. And it's not data for the sake of data, because I can see even from my phone, and I'll just give you an example. From my dashboard, which is available to the members of the public, you can see green dots, yellow dots, red dots. It is different places in the city. And so if I press maybe one dot, let me look for the worst. I can see 177, which is unhealthy. That is the index. It is in a community center. Just seeing this makes me easily ask the questions. What is happening there? And I know this is possibly about open garbage burning, you know, and we can take action quickly. And I have this dashboard right in my office. But beyond me having it as the governor, I have 7 million people who can access it. And I really like the presentation earlier. I need my influencers and content creators to have this and walk around the city. And what we've seen happening is amazing. In many areas, the community leaders, especially the women, because they can access this, tell the youth groups in the community-based organizations, stop burning the garbage. Put it, take it elsewhere, follow the rules. Because they can see the statistics, they can see the numbers, and they can see that they are on the red. And we've seen many moving to yellow and moving to green. Secondly, we've had a big issue with public transport. We aim to move into better, transit systems, etc. But in the meantime, I've had the longest fight with our public transport. We call them matatus. They're in small groups like circles, and each wants to bring 10 of them at the same time to the terminus. Now, in all those termini, I have a monitor. And the public can see this is red because you're bringing more than 10. And if you look today at the air quality in those termini, because many of the people, the stakeholders, they can see it, it has actually gone down to green. And so we're saving lives using data, and it's not data for the sake of data, but data to take practical action.
Thank you, Mayor Johnson. And this is an example of how we can really promote the change, but using data to inform people, and then they can also take action. So Mayor Galan, Bogota, I was also very lucky to be in Bogota and see part of your work. And what I appreciate the most about Bogota is they have like a very holistic approach, and this actually took you to win the prize, a very important prize, the Earthshot Prize. And I think this speaks for itself because you really care about the well-being of your people and how you combine this with bringing green and blue infrastructure into the city, but also improving the quality of air. I think it would be very nice if you can share with this audience the great work that you have done with SUMA and the low emission zones in Bogota, and how this is basically informed with good data as well.
Thank you, Cecilia. It's a pleasure to be here. Bogota has had a history in the last 10 years of improving the air quality thanks to what we've done with the transportation system. We have renewed the fleet, and we have low emissions or zero emissions buses now, mostly. We also have a policy for bikes that is very aggressive. We have 800,000 trips per day. But we understood, thanks to the information system that we have right now, that it didn't happen the same in the entire city. We have some areas of the city, especially areas with social and economic vulnerabilities that are higher with a lower air quality. So based on that, we understood that, for example, the respiratory diseases in those areas produce twice as many deaths per year than other areas in the city. So with that information, we understood the origin of that problem. The origin was unpaved roads, especially, also freight cargo trucks, and also some transportation, regional transportation systems that go into the city. So with that information, we launched a strategy focused on one area of the city, which is 2.2 square kilometers in the southwest part of the city. And with that, we intervene with the people around the area. As I mentioned, this is a vulnerable area. And we did some specific interventions. We're currently doing them, actually. Paving some roads, re-greening some spaces, and working with the transportation sector of the economy that works through that area to change the trucks and to improve the technology that they use. And with that information, we have been able to understand how we have to act, where to act, who we need to benefit first, who is more vulnerable, and with the information we understand we could take decisions which were very precise in how and where to act. So for us to have this monitoring system has been a huge improvement in air quality in areas like this, and we are currently working to have a second area, Suma. The first one is called Bosa Apogeo. The next one is going to be called Ciudad Bolívar Perdomo. And this is now, next to the one that we intervene, the worst area for air quality. So we are doing good policy with good information to have interventions that have a precise location.
Thank you, Mayor Galan, and it's amazing how Bogotá is really closing the gaps in the city. By really understanding, which are the main places in the city that are mostly affected because of bad quality of air, and how you can have interventions that can be more integrated in solving different things. And now we come with our third mayor. Unfortunately, I haven't yet been able to be in Warsaw, but I've been reading all over the news the great advances that Warsaw has had in reducing PM 2.5 emissions in almost 46%, if I'm not wrong, which is impressive and amazing. And I think this is just like a great example for the whole world, not only Europe. But Mayor, I know that there are also many other challenges, and especially I've heard that by implementing the clean transport zones, you've also had a lot of reactions from people, and there are different challenges. So I think it's also important to share with the audience, even though we have achieved so many results, when it comes to do like concrete interventions at the city level, you can also have a lot of reactions from people and citizens. Can you share more with us about this example in Warsaw?
Sure. Good afternoon. First of all, yes, we've reduced the DPM by 46%, and it was a long strategy because we eliminated most of the coal boilers. We invested in clean transportation, zero-emission transportation. We are also investing in renewables and so on and so forth. But clean air zone is always controversial. Why? Because people think it is an ideological question. A lot of people do not understand the real results of climate change. That's why we decided to make an issue of health. And that's why data was so critical, because we've done this project of installing 160 sensors which actually measure pollution, one of the most extensive systems in Europe. And people actually can check it in real time where the pollution is the highest. So it builds trust, it builds engagement, because people want to know whether the air is clean in their zone, and also builds an understanding why we're actually doing it, that this is for health reasons. And of course, it allows us to plan the clean zone, the clean air zone, well, but it also allows us to engage people and to explain that this is really a health issue. And on top of that, not only we measure, where the pollution is, but we also use the registers which are done by the city in order to check which cars are actually at what streets, how old they are, what kind of engines do they have, and so on and so forth, in order to plan, where there's the biggest heat signature, where there are the biggest emissions, and so on and so forth. And we also first use it in order to plan and implement the clean air zone, and then to adjust it well, but also to explain to the people the results of what we are doing. So data does not actually make your decisions easier. It doesn't make tough decisions easier, but it makes them more understandable to the people. So creating ownership, and you make it really a health issue, not an issue like the populists would want to portray it as an ideology, as trying to follow the trends and so on and so forth. It is about people's lives. So that's why data is so crucial, because it helps to analyze, it helps to explain, and it helps to plan for the future and adjust what we are doing. And that's why I think that we can be successful. And one last thing, it also allows us to explain why we are doing it step by step, so that we are not introducing it immediately. We have a plan to introduce it step by step, which is backed by the data, which is backed by the resources that we have, and which again makes it more palatable and understandable to the people. And I think that's why we can go forward with some of those decisions, which are not easy to make. And of course, it is made in we synchronize it with all the other things that we do that I've just mentioned, mostly when it comes to investing in zero emission public transportation, but also investing in renewables and striving towards a net zero city as quickly as possible.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. And of course, always facilitating a panel with mayors is very difficult because you never have enough time to say everything you would like. But I do want to say this morning we went for a run with a couple of participants and we were measuring the quality of air in Madrid, which by the way was really good. But it just makes you aware of how important it actually is to have access to that information. So I do want to thank mayors for making that information and data available to citizens, because it's important to take into account what citizens might feel when they have access to this information, and on the other hand, what mayors can do when they have good data that inform good policy, that makes good programs to benefit the health and the well-being of people. Thank you very much, and help me joining.
Hola, buenos días a todos y todas. Good afternoon, everybody. Great pleasure to be here, my first CityLab. What I wanted to share with you is some of the work we're doing both in research and in design, looking at public space. But before that, we're here at CityLab. It's interesting to think, for me, all the time, that once upon a time we did not have cities. Cities emerged around 10,000 years ago when our ancestors found this beautiful way to bring us together so that together we can be more than each of us individually. And then, because of that, in the city, public space is crucial. From the Agora in Athens, from every city you can look at over the past thousands of years, public space is central. And people have been studying public space in many different ways. For instance, anybody knows who this guy is? Yes. William Holy White. Holy White started studying cities 50 years ago, over 50 years ago, looking at the time at what were new technologies. So this is a beautiful book he wrote at the time, and the new technology at the time was Super 8 footage. So he started taking Super 8 footage in different parts of New York, or Boston, or Philadelphia, doing something like this, and then using this to understand how people use public space. If you go to Bryant Park, by the way, today you can say thank you, Holy White, because the reason we got this space, the beautiful park, and it is like that is because of the preservation campaigns that he somehow started. And he was looking at how people come together in public space, they follow shade, they follow the weather, when people make friends, when they like each other, when they don't like each other. And so he analyzed all of that. So, and what he was doing, in a similar way you saw before Bryant Park, but in looking at this, he would take the footage and then turn that into numbers. So you see there, by looking at all of that, then turn it into something like this. Now, so numbers, you could actually analyze and understand how we behave in public space. However, at the time, he was saying, well, using Super 8 cameras is fun, but evaluating, analyzing is really the difficult thing. Well, today we got friends, AI friends, they can do a lot of that for us. So what would take Holy White, William White, months and months of work with students and RAs, today can be done in a few seconds or minutes. That's deep learning. You train a system, you teach the system to analyze the images, and then you can segment it, you can look at where people are, where cars are, and you can get exactly the same thing that William White was getting. So what we decided to do last year is actually, can we go back to all of the original footage by William White taken in the 70s and 80s and analyze it once again today with AI and compare it with how people use public space, the same spaces today, in New York, in Boston, in Philadelphia. That's a paper. If anybody's interested, you find it on our website. And we discovered something that puzzled us a lot. For instance, we discovered that if you look at the 1980s and in more recent footage, lingering has changed a lot. Believe it or not, we walk 15% faster in public space. We only slow down when we bump, because we look at our phones, we bump into a street lamp. But then apart from that, we don't engage with the space in the same way. Look at those videos from the 70s and the 80s, people were looking and making friends and looking at what was happening in public space. This seems to be changing. And if you look at this, you see that happens in New York, but it's very, very solid. We measure the same also in all footage from Boston and Philly. Solo walkers, plus 68%. So public space is losing some of its very, very important function. The one we are seeing here, the function of bringing us together. And by the way, it's the same function of CityLab. We come here, why do we all fly to be in the same room here? Because the magic that happens in physical space, in public space, is what we cannot yet replicate. And maybe we will never be able to replicate in digital space. So those are the things, and then that led us to think about is something fundamental changing in the way we use public space. And I want to share with you what we are starting to do at MIT is actually look at thousands and thousands of images, representation of public space. This is Venice, for instance, over the past 3-4 centuries, in order to see if there's something more fundamental. Clearly, public space was a space. We would actually get access to stories, to news, and so on, and that is changing because of technology, especially recently because of smartphones and so on. So this is what I want to tell you about public space and how we can study it using AI. But then I want to give you a few examples, show a few examples of how in our work as designers, in our design office, we've been trying to design new type of public spaces, again, to promote that magic of basically creating new connections between people. This is a museum, and it's a digital culture center in Milan, just opened. It displays 2 existing buildings with many different levels, and we try to turn that almost like into a vertical plaza, where people could go and meet and so on, again, to maximize encounters. Here you see how they're using it. There's even more crowded pictures, but not allowed to show them because of fire safety. This is another public space we're designing right now. It is under construction. It's the largest cultural center in Italy at the moment. It's an old building from the 18th century. It's in Modena. And there we also try to make it livable all year round, but with this origami roof you see at the top. So the roof can open and close if you got too much heat, too much sun, if you got rain. And so it becomes a way to enjoy it in different ways. The next project I showed after I saw Bjarge's presentation this morning. So we bumped into each other here in Madrid and also last week. And so this is something we've done together in Singapore. And we had thought about this, the tallest building in Singapore, completed recently. And here we designed like a plaza overlooking the city. And it's a plaza where people can go and you can meet other people. You can be outdoor. Something I really don't like in Singapore is that at home I always feel like in a fish tank. Everything is sealed. You cannot breathe fresh air. And so here, if you look at this, there's thousands of trees, and you can go and meet people or meet nature together. And sometimes there's other types of coming together in cities. So this was the Olympics just a few weeks ago. And there for us was not about designing a public space, but designing what brings people together, the torch. I will not tell you too much about the torch. We follow a different approach for the torch. This year was, in order to be sustainable, the first thing you can do is actually reduce the amount of things you're using. So usually the torch, you got the engine in the middle, you got the burner, and then you do like a car design exercise. You build something around it. And what we tried to do here was actually design the smallest shape around the burner. It's the lightest torch ever made. And it turns out that that became something we liked. We also tried to make it visible, transparency, visible the mechanism inside. And that was another way to bring people together. The whole community, and also special ones. I'll finish with something I'm very proud of. It's something we've been doing with Bloomberg, so I want to thank all the Bloomberg team, Bloomberg Philanthropies team. It's something started last year when I was the director of the Venice Biennale. The Venice Biennale, by the way, it will open next week for art. 1 year is architecture, 1 year is art. Is one of the main events where the community comes together. Last year was architecture when I curated it. And here we started thinking about how can we create a public space, a plaza, floating on water in the simplest possible way. And if you look at it, it floats, it also goes up and down like a living organism, responding to people with the idea to almost being there at sea level and learning and playing with nature and not against it. So this was in Venice when we presented it. You see there's also water inside. The level of the water inside is also the rise in sea levels that's predicted by the end of the century. Same water from the outside goes inside the plaza. And then, we moved it to COP30 in the middle of the Amazon, the UN Conference on Climate. So here you see was still in Venice. You could actually almost look at a sea in the eyes. You could go up and down, and then inside a lot of events can take place, conversations and meetings and so on. So that was in Venice. We can go to the next slide, I think. Yes, so you see it here, then being moved to Belém in the middle of the Amazon. You can see it was on an existing ship, so we minimize CO2 emissions. You can see it arriving in Belém here. And you can see here in the middle of the Amazon, where it will stay forever. Following COP is kind of a public space floating there. On the other side, this side is Belém. It's the House of 11 Windows, the most historical place in Belém to the back. And to the other side, you see the beginning of the Amazon forest, that continues for thousands of miles. And so it became a place for conversation, for exhibition, for other things. This being Brazil, it also became a place for samba. So every night, people started appropriating it for doing things like this as soon as you put a bit of music. So it was quite beautiful for us to see how public space can perform so many functions. And so that's where I wanted to finish, with this. And again, with what really is at the core of city, public space, and how we should start from that if you really want to tackle some of the challenges we've been discussing, including polarization. Thank you.
You've just watched a video clip from my brand new documentary, Soy Tribulete Siete, which is the human stories behind Madrid's housing crisis. So that's the context that I want to begin this conversation today. So yesterday we heard from Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez that Spain has just implemented a brand new law to address Spain's housing crisis. However, he also mentioned that there are some regions in Spain that have chosen not to opt into the law, and Madrid is one of them. As such, evictions continue every day, including invisible evictions. They are evictions of people who are priced out of their homes and they simply cannot afford to live there anymore, so they have to move to a different neighborhood or possibly a different city. And as a result, we have protests almost every day, and every now and then, huge record-breaking protests, just like I captured in this clip. And we've talked a lot in the past couple of days about the housing crisis and about affordable housing. But something that we haven't talked so much about is the social movements behind these, or otherwise, civic participation and civic leadership. So I'm here today with Dr. Henry Han to discuss how city leaders can help equip residents to solve problems together. Dr. Han, you've researched civic leadership in the US, and you talk a lot about collective life in cities dealing with polarization. Can you tell us more about this and what inspired this idea?
Sure. Well, so in a lot of ways, I think, as was reflected in the video clip that you showed, is the key question for city leaders, I think, is how do we enable people of all kinds to become architects of their own future? And that's especially a huge challenge in a pluralistic society in which not everyone agrees. And this essentially is the work of what democracy is. The audacious promise at the heart of democracy has always been this idea that we overcome inequality of resources with equality of voice. But the problem is not everyone is born knowing how to exercise voice. Like, it's a really hard thing. And how do we do that in a way that is tolerant of people who disagree with us, that enables us to forge the common community that we want? And so in the same way that we all have to go to the gym to exercise our bodies, we also need to go to the gym to exercise our democracy muscles. And that's what I think the importance of a lot of the civic spaces that we've been talking about for the last couple of days is, because those are like the democracy gyms that equip us to be able to become architects of our own future.
That's so true. And especially it's reflected in squares, just like we saw in the previous conversation. So here in Madrid, public parks are really important for civic participation. For example, Parque Cornisa is a really beautiful park in Madrid, just near the palace. And it's also where the brand new city center neighborhood association La Chispera was founded. And in fact, the secretary, Matt Morgan, is here with us today. So Dr. Han, what can cities do to protect and support these third spaces, such as squares, libraries, bars, cafes, that often spark civic leadership?
Yeah, so the third spaces are absolutely vital to making democracy work. Tocqueville called them the great free schools of democracy in a lot of ways, and especially in a pluralistic community, though, the real challenge in a lot of these third spaces is to figure out how do we move from encounter to commitment. In a pluralistic democracy, the currency of value is the commitment to work with each other. And so, there's a saying that says, when a couple is fighting, they can fight like they want to stay married, or they can fight like they want to get divorced. And too often in our, digital spaces, it feels like people are fighting like they want to get divorced, but what we really need are third spaces that are going to help people fight like they want to, stay married, right? Like, it's like we want the commitment to be generated. And so I think the challenge in thinking about these third spaces now is really how do we design for relationship and not just interaction. We live in a world now in which we have myriad interactions all day long, but the difference between an interaction and a relationship is that in a relationship, both people have an expectation of a shared future. So how do we design these third spaces that enable for that kind of expectation to emerge?
Perhaps one way we could design them is also through mapping. And so let's take a look at the other side of civic participation and how best to use technology to foster civic engagement. So you and your team developed a really exciting mapping project called Mapping the Modern Agora. So to anyone who doesn't know what agora is, it's the ancient Greek word for public open space used for assemblies and markets. Dr. Han, can you tell us how city and government officials sitting in this room can use this map to help them?
Yeah, the Mapping the Modern Agora project was a map that leveraged a lot of big data tools to try to create a map of civic infrastructure in the United States. And it started from the idea that so many of the challenges that we're facing nowadays, decline of trust, social cohesion, loneliness, the problems are decentralized, and so the solutions must also be decentralized. But the problem when you're tackling with a social challenge that has decentralized solutions is that it can be hard for city leaders, for policymakers to make strategic investments, right? Because the work is necessarily decentralized, embedded in local contexts, as it should be. And so what we wanted to do with the map is basically figure out how can we use data to essentially get up on the balcony and look at the whole, so that by looking at the whole, we can figure out where the civic deserts are, where we might need more investment, how our resources are flowing, so that we can be strategic about making choices to solve the problems that we need to solve.
Perhaps some of those civic deserts are in neighborhoods where there are no squares, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. You can see there's clear patterns in where what we call civic opportunity lies, that correlates with a lot of the other kind of structural inequalities that we see in society, for sure.
So we've looked at the hyperlocal level of civic leadership and this idea of collective life, and also on a macro level, you've given us a sense of how data and technology can be used to explore opportunities and gaps in engagement. So in our last minute, let's bring this all together. You have a very no-frills saying, people are people are people. What does that mean?
Yeah. So when I first started doing this work, I started my career kind of working in politics before I began to research it. And I remember one of my mentors kind of said, the thing you have to remember when you're doing organizing, when you're working in politics, is that people are people are people. And I think that's a really important lesson to remember, because we live in a world that is so divided, and a political system and a public system, I think, that encourages us to fragment people further, like send this message to that group of people and this message to that group of people, and let's send out all these kind of disparate sort of things. But the thing that we learn if we look at the data is that most people have a common yearning, right? People have a common yearning for dignity, for agency, for belonging. And what the data shows essentially is that if we create communities in which we do things like put belonging before belief, then we're able to do a lot more together than we would if we were to work alone. And so to me, the idea of people are people are people is this idea that once you create spaces or create opportunities for people to have an experience of their own dignity in the public sphere, they can never unhave it. And once they have that, then they begin to demand it. And that's the virtuous cycle that we need to create between the public and policymakers.
Love it. Thank you, Dr. Han.
Thank you.
Thank you to our audience for listening.
Night workers. They are the invisible engines of our cities. They contribute tens of billions of dollars to urban economies around the globe, but that labor comes with a cost. Night workers are more likely to manage lifestyle factors than those of us who work in the daytime. That can lead to sleep and mood disorders, cardiovascular disease, digestive issues, and cancer. So we're here with three people who are working on solutions to better support this population. Dr. Andrina Cejas, she's the founder and principal at Night Tank. Michael Rodriguez, he's the 24-hour economy commissioner for New South Wales State Government. And Sarah Douglas, founder of Nightclub and the executive director of the Liminal Space. So Andrina, I would just want to start with a level set of who these workers are.
Yes. Thank you, Jen. So first, I think the most important thing is to put a face to who these workers are. So it's important to clarify that night shift workers are not a niche group. We're talking about globally 1 in 5 workers are engaged in some type of shift work. And when we look at Spain, in Spain it's around 16% of the workforce that works regularly at night. It's around 2 million people. And most of these night workers are men. They tend to be younger. They tend to be among lower income workers, and many of them belong to migrant populations. And it's very important to also understand that there's not just one type of night shift work. We're referring to a very broad ecosystem. So it's a number of jobs that range from healthcare workers, service workers, cleaners, security personnel, hospitality, and this is part of the hidden infrastructure of a 24-hour economy. This is something we're looking at very closely with the World Economic Forum. There's something called the 24-Hour Economy Initiative. It's a platform launched in 2025 that aims to get together researchers, city leaders, and also private sector leaders to think collectively about what's the 24-hour economy and how to manage our cities after dark. But very importantly, I think it's, as I said before, to humanize who these workers are and to understand that many of them are working under very irregular conditions. They don't have places to rest. They don't have places to have a meal. And in many cases, they don't even choose these jobs. These jobs are just the only alternative, the only option they have in a very restrictive labor market. So it's important to understand how big, how broad and essential night shift workers are, and be important to take care to protect those who keep our cities running.
Let's look at two different approaches to supporting this community. Sarah, I want to start with your work in London. Nearly 1.4 million people in that city usually work in the evening or at night, so that's 1 in 4 workers in London. Your organization, Nightclub, works directly with companies to improve the health and well-being of these workers. But what concerns are they reaching out to you about it, and what kind of solutions are you able to offer them?
Yeah, so the organisations that we work with, which include Transport for London, our National Health Service, British Airways, they all come to us with the same set of issues, which is that they are struggling with the physical and mental health of their night shift. They're seeing very high absence rates, much higher than on their day shift. They have issues with engagement, with productivity, higher accident rates, and all of these factors contribute to incredibly high churn and attrition rates on the night shift, which is bad news for business, it's bad news for employees, and ultimately bad for how our cities run and function. Before I start talking about solutions, I did want to do a poll. If anyone can put their hand up who works night shifts. So I don't mean pulling an all-nighter every now and then, or looking after babies. Thanks, Mike. So that's a very common thing for us when we start our work with leaders in cities and in businesses, that people who are trying to solve this problem might not have any direct experience or contact with it. And so the first thing that we do is we take people onto the night shift to meet with night shift workers to understand how they exist and the problem from their perspective. And it's eye-opening. People learn that there's often huge issues accessing health and childcare, just getting transportation to work. People are often working second jobs during the day once they've finished their night shift work. These are low-income, blue-collar workers that we're talking about and working with. So Nightclub as a solution essentially is a health and well-being intervention for night shift workers. It's designed with businesses and workers. It's the only program that takes place at night on shift, and it's a co-designed solution, and we're seeing great results from the program.
Well, you mentioned the importance of hearing from night workers themselves about the challenges they face. So let's watch this video that has some of them sharing their health concerns and issues.
I think the biggest thing for any night workers is trying to sleep.
Pretty much permanent jet lag. It affects your moods as well, I'd say.
I do take sleeping tablets, which I have been on for 9 years in September.
Me personally, it's been my blood pressure.
I have found out last year that I'm diabetic type 2, and that was one of the impacts night shift had on me as well.
There's a lot that you can educate people who are working shift work around, but they often don't have control over their environment. So I think the support really needs to come from further up the scale.
Further up the scale. So, Commissioner Rodriguez, that's where we come to you. New South Wales, Australia is really leading the way worldwide on an action plan with some concrete solutions to ensuring workers are not only cared for, but also heard. So what's in the action plan and what's working so far?
Yeah, I think as we come to that, I think if we are leading, and in the context of this room, where city leadership, often the question that we're asking is, how do we activate the night? In New South Wales, we've asked this question: how do we support the workers who keep the night running? It reframes the policy question. What you discover is what Sarah just demonstrated. We plan our city spatially, not temporally, that is, not for around time, and we default to the day. I'll come to the plan, but what's most important is the quantitative and qualitative data that it's based on. And I think we're seen as world leading simply because we've gone and done the work based on the foundational work done by two globally respected academics at the University College of London and University of Melbourne that has allowed us to really understand the workforce. And it will come as no surprise to you then that the plan identifies everything that you've just heard: economic security, physical and mental health and well-being, access to essential services, safety and security. The last one is the up the scale thing that Sarah just mentioned, which is recognition and advocacy. It's critical because it's only through that can you address the structural imbalance of cities that we've designed for the day.
So longer term, how will you gauge whether or not your plans are successful?
Yeah, I guess like incremental improvement on all of those things. But really, the ultimate success of the plan for New South Wales is this, is that one day we no longer talk about night workers at all. Because when it comes to work, there should be no difference between night and day.
Andrina, I want to make sure we understand the reality of life for people, for those of us who don't work at night. And as you look at cities around the world who are trying to rethink what it means to create solutions for night workers, where do you see cities struggling and where do you see opportunities to replicate what's working?
Thanks, Jen. I'll start with a very concrete example from Barcelona, which is the city where I'm based, and where I've been advising the city's night commissioner. Barcelona is the first city in Spain that has a dedicated role, the night commissioner, similar to roles like Mike's in New South Wales and more than 100 cities that have night mayors, managers, and others. So with the commissioner, we were looking at the data, and we saw that 1 in 2 people moving through Barcelona at night do so for work-related purposes. However, when you look at our metro is only open 24 hours on Saturdays. So that points to a mismatch. We have systems that are running 24 hours, but they're not aligned with work, but just with leisure. So one thing we need to think about when it comes to planning and understanding the conditions for night shift work is that there's going to be more night shift work in the future, not only from the supply perspective and the demand perspective, but also because climate, as Mike was just saying, there's a temporal element of planning, but not just spatial, and climate is a very important element, a critical dimension of resilience. We just did a study last year where we looked at in peak heat days, when there's peak heat events, we see that during the middle of the day, there's a dead zone. There's sectors such as retail, clothing that are more impacted, while others like hospitality are more resilient. So what that means is that in the long term, we're gonna see more economic activity moving into the night, and with that, the jobs that are part of that. But what are cities facing with right now? We have on one hand, from a governance perspective, there's a fragmented governance. Night shift work doesn't fall into one department. It cuts throughout healthcare and safety. And then also we see that there's lack of data and visibility on who these workers are. Some cities don't have the numbers, particularly when many of these workers work informally. So what can cities do? They can begin by aligning their systems, like transportation, with the hours in which night shift workers are actually operating, and also integrating night shift work within urban strategies and health strategies.
So let's wrap up in these final moments with where there's still work to be done. Sarah, where do you see opportunities to deepen or expand the work you're doing?
So we work with cities, we work with many sectors across the UK, and what we've seen with the partners that we work with is that absence rates are improving, productivity is improving, and health is improving. So we really stand by this co-creative way of working where you bring cities together with business leaders and critically with night shift workers to design better solutions. And we'd love to work with cities who are forward-looking and really want to get to know this hidden shift that power their cities.
And Commissioner, for cities that want to replicate what you're doing in New South Wales, what advice would you share?
There's maybe 3 things I'd just put on the table to think about, and just say at the outset that it's great to be a leader, but we learn all together. So for the time being, I would say stop thinking about nighttime economy only as activation. Recognise instead night work as critical infrastructure, and shift from pilots to system redesign, and most importantly, design for time, not just for space.
Well, Sarah, Michael, Andrina, thank you.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. The penultimate session, almost there. Thank you so much for being here. We all know that mayors and city leaders have multiple priorities, and that we've heard today about challenges and innovative solutions in housing, education. We just heard about labor, public infrastructure, climate, and now we turn to transportation. Daniel is CEO of Via Transportation, a transit technology company. Welcome, Daniel.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Tell us briefly what your platform does and what it solves for cities.
So very briefly, at Via, we've built a software platform that is based on data and AI and advanced algorithms that allows us to design, plan, schedule, and operate the best transit systems in the world, trying to take into account, of course, the local needs and the local traffic patterns, and utilizing the right mode in the right place to try to drive as much ridership as possible for a given budget.
So with all of the issues on mayors and city leaders' plates, we just listed a bunch of them, why should they invest in transportation and why now?
I think this is a great question and one that we think about a lot. I recognize as mayors you have enormous list of priorities and oftentimes real budget pressures. I truly believe, and we've seen this across the country and the world, we operate in 40 countries, we have over 800 partners around the world, that transportation is just a crucial issue for residents. I think you saw it in the folks from Jigsaw, where they presented yesterday. Transportation or infrastructure in Bowling Green was the #1 topic that residents raised. We find this pretty consistently. And I truly believe that a great public transportation system, of course, helps the neediest residents, the most vulnerable residents, can help you reduce congestion, reduce emissions. These are all worthy priorities, but most importantly, it drives up economic activity. It gets people to be able to access jobs, it drives tax revenue, it drives the economy, and the American Public Transit Association found that for every $1 invested in public transit, the local economy gets back $5. There's a recent study from MIT for Chicago that shows an 11-to-1 benefit. For every $1 invested in public transit, you get back $11 in economic activity. So this is truly a critical priority for a local city, and I think when you think about the greatest cities in the world, what is common to all of them, and we can debate, Mayor Sadiq Khan had some comments. I'm from New York, so I have some feelings about that, but all of these cities have great transit, get great public transit. I think that's what makes them common. So having a great transit system is critical.
You cited some academic studies, but this is not just academic for you. You have actual case studies and examples from the cities you've worked with. Can you share a few very specific anecdotal examples of the outcomes you're seeing?
Absolutely, and I'll share a couple of examples from folks in the room, but you asked Stephanie, I didn't answer, why now? And I think that's another critical question. Transit, I think for a lot of mayors I speak with, they feel like transit is something they don't necessarily want to get into. It's sort of a part of their business that is unlikely to be fixed, that is unlikely to have any positive outcome for them. And with new technologies and new concepts that we now have today, I think the opposite is true. So we're able to use software and data to design better bus routes, to concentrate bus routes, and these are these case studies that I'll point to focus bus routes on where you really need them. So historically, we've only had buses that we could use in cities. So we've had to send our buses into low density areas, into suburbs, into locations where buses don't really serve very well. Those buses often are heavily underutilized. We run them very infrequently, so people don't want to use them. They're running these circuitous routes, and so they don't work very well. Instead of that, the right approach, we believe, is to replace those buses with very frequent, direct buses that run straight routes and concentrate your resources on those buses that people are actually going to want to use. And then in all the other parts of the city, launch what is Via's core innovation, which is dynamically routed transit or microtransit. These are smaller shuttles that can be routed dynamically and can cover your lower density areas. If people need to travel within those areas locally, they can use these microtransit shuttles. If they need to go a longer distance, we connect them to these frequent buses, and those frequent buses take them where they need to go. And we've seen that work extremely well. Mayor Paul ten Haken is here in the audience in Sioux Falls, where we've worked together with the mayor to take over the entire transit system and do exactly what I described. So remove the low-performing bus routes, replace the bus system with these much more frequent direct routes, and launch a citywide microtransit system. So we've gone from where under 60% of the city was accessible by public transit to a situation where 100% of the city is now accessible by public transit, but with much better service for residents. West Sacramento is another example. The mayor is here. There we identified that actually the way the city is laid out, buses are a lot less useful in general, and we've launched a citywide microtransit system to get people anywhere in the city on microtransit. That's also had tremendous results. In Sioux Falls, the transit system was losing ridership every year.
Since we've taken over the system, we've increased ridership by close to 40%, which is pretty remarkable in less than 2 years.
And so it sounds like the results can be seen very quickly. Like, how fast can you turn around a transit system? Like, within an election cycle, say?
I don't know why you would ask that. Is that important to folks here? You know, the answer is within weeks. So I think this is one of those priorities where really, you should speak with Mayor Ten Hagen, who's here. I do think a lot of mayors just don't really want to touch transit. And many times I recognize as mayors, you may not control transit. It may be controlled by a regional transit agency or a state agency or a national body, and it is very difficult to influence transit. But I actually believe that as a mayor, it is one of those things that you can have enormous influence over and see the results almost immediately. We can analyze the system. You know, in Sioux Falls, it took us several months. We probably worked for about 9 months with the mayor and city council. We wanted to do a lot of outreach. We wanted to go out in the community, listen to people, understand what local businesses were looking for, what the university was looking for, and then roll out something that had broad consensus. We can do that. We can also work extremely quickly to launch a new system. And we're typically doing it within the existing budget, so we wouldn't want to go and blow up the budget. Budget is very tough, but within the existing budget, you can transform your system from one that, you know, in many cities, you look at a bus and you think, oh, here's another empty bus that's going by that, you know, we're paying for, to one where there's true enthusiasm in the community for public transit, and again, it drives growth. We have a service in Muskegon, Michigan, where 60% of residents who use the service reported that they gained employment thanks to the service. So there's real impact.
Daniel, you have a PhD in neuroscience from Stanford University in the United States. Why do this?
This is the question my mother asks me quite regularly. She says, with all of this education, you ended up a taxi dispatcher. And I say, no, I'm a bus dispatcher, just to be clear. And I think it is, and the answer is that I think this, I truly, you know, if you look at people who work across Team Avia, we have about 1,000 employees. Like I said, we're 800 cities or more around the world. We have over 10,000 drivers who work on our platform. And we provide software to about 600 of these cities, and 200, we are actually the transit agency. So we can be an outsourced transit agency. And the folks we hire, they're incredibly capable engineers and operations folks and business folks, and they're incredibly mission driven. I do believe that there is, when we improve public transportation, residents see it, it's very visible, the impact is immediate, and I've heard this a lot through the last couple days at CityLab. I'm trying to figure out how to get invited again, so I'm thinking maybe if one of you mayors could hire me and you come here, I can come again. I think the impact is so powerful that it's just a really important cause. So we're trying to do our best here.
It's a powerful message. Come find Daniel. Thank you so much.
So much.
So how was CityLab? Good to hear. CityLab has always been about ideas. But more than that, it is about how ideas move. CityLab is also about a community, global, connected, that believes cities aren't just managing the present, they're designing the future. And that belief carries a responsibility. Because the pace of change right now, technological, economic, social, it's not slowing down. And in this kind of moment, cities do not get to drift. They don't get to wait. They have to act, and they have to act with ambition. One of the themes that has been running through the program this week, and particularly today, is connection. And underneath that, something more fundamental: trust, legitimacy, belief. the sense that government can work, that it sees people, that it belongs to them. Rebuilding that belief is the core task of governing in this era. With that idea in mind, we have a tradition here at CityLab that I'll tell you about. A couple years ago, we decided that we'd close CityLab each year by interviewing a mayor who we believed had something really important to say to the world. A mayor who, in their own way, is demonstrating what the moment demands of city leadership. 2 years ago, it was then Mayor Claudia Sheinbaum, before she became president of Mexico, showcasing what a humanistic, people-centered, disciplined, and digital leadership could do to ensure that every resident, particularly the least resourced and the poorest, that they could access every single service that they were entitled to, that was their right. Last time it was Mayor Amagulu of Istanbul, who reminded us of the critical role of local government in preserving and strengthening democracy. He and I had that conversation 5 months before his arrest. He's still in jail. And this year, as we've been talking more and more about trust, legitimacy, and connection, I'm really happy to interview and welcome a mayor who I think is working every day to strengthen those things. Mayor Daniel Lurie took office in January of last year at a moment when the narrative about San Francisco had reached rock bottom. Urban doom loop, legitimacy crisis, whatever you want to call it, the vibes were not good, the prospects not high. 15 months later, there is a different energy emerging, an optimism, a sense of shared ownership, a new relationship with government in formation. Mayor Lurie, it is so early in San Francisco. Thank you so much for being here. Everyone, please join me in welcoming Mayor Lurie to CityLab.
Jim, you got quite the ovation there. That was good. Your approval ratings must be sky high.
You're one to talk, sir. Okay, so good to see you. Let me start with something that I've been calling governing out loud. It is the idea that local leaders, elected officials, have to show their work in new and different ways today, to close the gap between City Hall and the street, to make their government more legible to people in their everyday lives. I think you have done this in a very tangible, practical way, particularly through your video, through your social media strategy. Tell us how that is shaping the way that you lead.
Well, first, I appreciate it. I appreciate being here. I went for a walk yesterday. I dropped my son off at school, and I saw a couple of encampments. I walked down an alley, and there was people using drugs. And a business owner came running out to me. She had a picture of her car a year and a half ago on fire because of an encampment that set her car on fire. And she said, I want to do business here, but I do not feel safe. My customers don't feel safe coming down this alley. But she also was like, thank you for being here. Thank you for walking the streets. I get a lot of feedback, both good and bad, when I am out. But I'm out every single day, every single morning. And most of the time, I'm not videoing it. I'm not putting it on Instagram. But I feel like as mayor, you need to walk the streets. You need to be able to see the issues up close. And if you don't, Jim, I always say you can't solve what you can't see. And I think as mayors, and I know there's a lot of them in there, and I'm honored to be amongst this great group, you are not going to get the job done. And then what we try to do with our social, and our team is great, is really try to capture the best of our city. I do feel like I have to be our cheerleader. As you mentioned, we were being knocked down quite often. It's one of the reasons I ran, because a lot of the critique of our city was correct. People didn't feel safe. There was open drug use at our bus stops. It was tough to get a permit in our city. And those are my three focus areas every single day. How do I keep the people of San Francisco safe? How do I keep our tourists safe? Our convention goers safe? And then how do we get people off the street who are using and into treatment beds? And then how do we streamline the permitting process? And we have done 20 pieces of legislation through Permit SF, making it easier to open a small business, to keep it up and running, to change your windows and your doors at your home. And so we're taking on three really big challenges, but I think it's important that the people of San Francisco see what I'm up to and see what my administration is doing. And so we're constantly trying to keep people in touch, because I don't think people are getting their news, from the traditional sources that we're used to. They're getting it online, and I have many people come up to me and say, I'm keeping up to date on San Francisco through your TikTok or your Instagram.
Thank you for that. Part of showing your work and governing out loud and increasing legibility is also being candid about where things aren't going as fast as you'd like them to go. Where are you still pushing? How do you balance the momentum you're generating with the honesty that the residents expect?
Yeah, so crime hit historic lows last year for us in our city. It was down 30% year over year. Homicides were at the lowest rate since 1954. And now I know there are a lot of mayors in the room that the same thing is happening in your cities. I know crime is down across our country, and that is great news for all of us. And someone this weekend asked me, who is not living here any longer, how is 10th and Mission? And I said, it's still a problem. And the reason it's still a problem is we're still short. When I walked in, we were short 500 police officers. We need more officers out walking the beat. I say that all the time. And then I'll go to the corner of 16th and Mission or 24th and Mission, some of our BART plazas, and we still have vending, illegal vending happening. We have groups gathering. And if we had more officers, we would be able to station them at fixed posts and do a better job. So I'm not shy about saying that. I'm not shy about telling you about the story that happened yesterday morning across from my son's school. And yet, I'll also say that 2 weeks ago, we had a graduating class of 41 police officers. It was the largest graduating class we've had since 2017. In 2023, we had 2,500 people apply to be police officers. Last year, it was 5,000. This year, we're on pace for 10,000 applications. So we've reinstilled that sense that we want law enforcement. We want to support our police officers, and that message is getting out there.
Thank you for that. So your approval numbers are strong, and just as important, so are the city's right track, wrong track numbers. There seems to be growing buy-in from residents. There's a sense that San Francisco is coming back. What does that emerging sense of optimism, trust, belief unlock for you, especially on these hardest challenges like housing, homelessness, and others?
Yeah, I think, listen, many of you know I've never been in politics before. I'm 15 months into my first political job, and I am not satisfied. I'm not content. I will say 2 years ago, it was the right track numbers were 22% of San Franciscans felt like we were on the right track. Today that number is somewhere around 65%. That is really excellent. And the reason it is because of what you introed, and I'm sure you all have been talking about. It's because we're getting those little wins. Car break-ins are at 22-year lows. You can now get a permit for a number of small things in 48 hours or less, and you don't have to come to the permit center. You don't even have to come down to City Hall anymore for some of those permits. I don't know why I would start thinking about doing other things like public safety. the drug crisis on our streets, and continuing to make it easier to do business with the city and county of San Francisco. People are like, what's your long-term vision of San Francisco? Like, where do you want to be 10 years from now? And now I want us to be known as we used to be known as the greatest city in the world. I think we are the greatest city in the world. No offense to my fellow mayors in the room. But if we continue to do those three things, we're the home of AI, we're the home of innovation, we're the home of tech, we're the home of some of the greatest arts and cultural institutions in the world, we're the home of the greatest restaurants in the world. Like, I don't want to get in the way of any of that. I want to unlock that. I want people to want to be in San Francisco. I want them to want to do business. I think if we as mayors do the basics, our people, our entrepreneurs, especially here in San Francisco, will do the rest.
You're talking to a room filled with mayors, city innovators, entrepreneurs, some academics. If 10 years out is too far a trajectory, if they came to San Francisco in a year's time, what would you most want them to see?
Well, I mean, you got to come visit the sites. You got to visit the ferry building. You got to come to our Mission District and to Ocean Beach, which is an incredible up and coming neighborhood out there in the Sunset. I want you all to come visit San Francisco because it's definitely the most beautiful city in the world. And when we're at our best, we're the greatest city in the world. So I don't know, Jim.
Daniel, do you want to say it or should I? Why don't you?
Yeah. Hey, I couldn't make it to Madrid, and so I asked Jim and I asked Mayor Bloomberg. I said, could we have the honor of hosting next year's Bloomberg CityLab? And Jim and the mayor said, I wasn't waking up this early for
nothing. We can't wait for you to host us.
We are so thrilled. We are so thrilled. We can't wait. I know Jessica McLeod from my team has been out there all week. She's told me it's been awesome.
There's Jessica.
So we're looking forward to launching an open innovation challenge next year. We're inviting our residents. We can't wait to show off San Francisco, and we can't wait to hear all the great things that you all are doing in your cities. We can't wait. We can't wait.
Thanks for being with us today.
Of course. Thank you.
All right, so let me leave you all with this. What you heard today and what we've seen throughout this week points to something big. We have entered a new era of city leadership. There was a time when governments could announce something, go behind closed doors, come back in 6 months or a year, announce some results. Is that time over? I think that time is over. Today, leadership has to look different. It has to feel different to our residents. It means doing the work and showing the work. It means rebuilding trust not through words, but through what people experience every day, as Mayor Klitschko reminded us so poignantly this morning. Plowing the snow, picking up the trash, making the systems work, and then also letting people in, governing out loud, and recognizing something we don't say often enough. The expertise we need won't be found exclusively in our city halls. It exists in our communities, in people's lived experiences. Rebuilding trust means bringing that collective wisdom in, not as feedback, but as partnership. And if we get that right, if we close the distance between city halls and residents and maintain the kind of ambition that we've seen in so many presentations across these few days, then cities won't just be responding to change, they'll be shaping it. They'll be making those technological and economic and social transitions work hard for their people. They'll build belief in what government is capable of doing and what we are capable of doing when we work together. That really is what CityLab is all about. Not just solutions for cities, but a community that knows local governments can respond and adapt across countries and challenges no matter the moment. So thank you for being a part of this community. On behalf of Michael Bloomberg, our CEO, Patty Harris, our partners at the Aspen Institute, and the incredible team at Bloomberg Philanthropies, thank you for bringing your energy, your ideas, your ambition. Safe travels home, and we will see you in San Francisco.